economy, health, and the state of affairs today. The big question is, what are the repercussions once the world gets back to, quote, normal? So after losing their jobs, thousands of millennials could be searching for a new place to live. So looking here, the worst case scenario for real estate post-COVID-19. Scores of apartments could be empty as thousands of renters face evictions after losing their jobs as millennials in pricey spots of New York and San Francisco flee in search of cheaper pastures. Major companies significantly downsize to give back their space in favor of remote work. Few tenants will be able to step in to fill their space, a large driver of recent leasing activity. Co-working firms struggle to get their new members and are forced to shutter. It talks a bit about malls. They're closing down, hotels remaining empty, student housing becoming vacant shells. Malls shutter, and no one will step in to help as lenders hit forbearance fatigue and refuse to extend any more relief to owners. So while that's a doomsday scenario that hopefully doesn't come to pass, many Americans are still living in fear of the country's future. So it kind of depends where you are specifically, what city, what state, and just kind of the amount of consumer confidence. But at least for me and a lot of my friends and family that I've spoken to, it appears that consumer confidence is going up. There's a few opinions here about what the new normal is, whether we'll ever get back to the new normal. We've kind of heard the same thing over and over. But companies have begun to downsize, not only with the employees, but reducing the office square footage in favor of remote work. So commercial real estate is taking a huge hit as tenants want to fill that commercial space. So retail shopping experience has greatly changed. You're having a lot of sanitation, social distancing being encouraged. The traditional mall experience is dwindling away, especially with the prevalence, or I guess the increased amount of online shopping that people are doing now. But despite that, consumer confidence seems to be going up. Big shopping strips will be letting go of their underperforming properties, which I found is really interesting. So here we go. These big chains aren't going to be taking on new space. You're going to be letting go of underperforming space. So it talks about, again, the malls, what's been going on with them. But it's not just retail seeing the early signs of a doomsday prophecy. Office properties, long seen as a real estate safe haven, have seen scores of tenants not paying rent, while major occupiers have floated the idea of downsizing their footprint. Even Facebook and Google told their employees to plan to work from home until 2021, while Twitter went one step further and will allow the majority of its staff to work remotely forever. So of a survey of more than 500 startup founders recently released by leadership consulting group The Kung Group found that 66% of them are looking at a downsizing or eliminating their office. So that's a big game changer in terms of what would happen to that commercial property. Could it potentially be rezoned? Maybe they would tear it down to make room for more affordable housing, apartment complexes, single family homes, whatever it may be. Maybe offices in certain spaces becoming hoteling where there is virtually an element of creativity and sharing ideas. Says Ryder, long a proponent of virtual work for his own company. They become a place for meetings and less the narrative that you commute an hour and a half every day to sit in an office. So again, they're just talking about cutting the commute and being able to share ideas through the internet. So that could leave landlords scrambling to fill that space and potentially few options to do it with. Many companies, if they keep their office, will simply renew their current digs, while others will go to business. So, in theory, you could have here, if companies do need physical space, many could seek out other cities across the country with cheaper real estate, good livability rates, and a large talent pool like Charlotte, North Carolina. If people are saying we can choose to have office space, it's very expensive and a very high cost of living, or maybe we can look at Charlotte and recruit and retain talent and spend less on office space, he said. If we're working virtually, can I hire people that aren't working locally? Does that become more professionally and socially successful? So if your company isn't telling you to come back to the office and you're not even in the city right now, why are you signing a lease this summer? Okay, so this is pretty big. Just to roll it back a bit, for example, they use Charlotte, North Carolina as an example. We could use New York. They're having a bit of issues with their commercial property. Maybe they come down to Austin, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, whichever it may be. And that they can set up their home base there, set up shop, but however, they can hire all over the country if everyone is working remotely. So your remote work is also expanding the pool of employees that you can have. Co-working companies, which have been gobbling up thousands of square feet in cities in recent years, are also feeling the pain and will be unlikely to sign new deals. Some have already talked about giving back some space. So multifamily sales, especially ones with rent-stabilized units, have already faced large decreases before the coronavirus pandemic due to the rent reforms passed by the state last year. If that hasn't changed, coupled with the impact of the coronavirus, it could spell doom for the city's multifamily sector. Overall, when you have a system when you can't raise revenue and expenses go up and the government's against you, that is not an investable sector. You're actually going to lose money. People give up, so you're going to see what neighborhoods look like when boilers aren't replaced and when there's no investment into apartments. And then he says here, the worst case scenario is a true bankruptcy of the neighborhoods. So basically what he's just trying to say is that the multifamily market, it's a bit shaky right now, considering there are periods where there is rent forgiveness in certain states, and as a country, we're not exactly sure of what that would look like for landlords in the longer term. However, it looks like rentals will still be a decent option, and just keeping single family homes, even for first responders, it could be a better strategy as opposed to owning an apartment complex. It can kind of cut both ways, but either way, it's up to you.